Well, today I was going to talk about the 5 most compelling storylines that have my attention as we head into training camp. Just less than 2 weeks away now. The Seahawks set to open practices July 23rd at the VMAC. And then an experienced, long-time NFL reporter put out a piece today that frankly pissed me off to the point that I had to change my plans and do an episode just for this. Something showed up on ESPN today while I was at the gym that caught my attention. Somebody else retweeted it. And the crux of it is an old, tired take that I'm so exhausted talking about. And I truly hope this is the last offseason we have to talk about it. I feel like it's shoddy reporting. And it's, as I said, frankly, lazy. What is it that has me so ticked off? I'll let you know on the other side.
Welcome to the Seahawks Forever podcast. In-depth analysis on everything Seahawks. And now, here's your host, Dan Viens.
Look, you guys, if you've watched the show for any length of time, know that I tend to lean towards the optimistic, the silver lining, glass half full. As the mission statement of my channel states, it's thoughtful analysis is the goal here. I try to balance my passion as a lifetime Seahawk fan with my reporter brain and the journalistic side of how my mind works. And sometimes I'm better at it than others. And sometimes the emotional part, the passionate part, overrules the other side of my brain. And today is one of those days. And I just want to state right off the top, like I don't mean this as a diss on this reporter. I'll give you his name in a moment when we start going over this stuff. He's been doing this a long time. He used to cover the Giants and the Jets, and he's worked for ESPN for a long time, and now he's in their analytics department. But I just couldn't not say it today. Before I get into this, if you'll subscribe to the channel, if you don't already, it's the best way to support what I do as a full-time content creator. Hit the bell if you want to be notified of new material anytime it's posted, and it's almost daily. And then the other material that I do, you can check out the Patreon page. I just recently stripped all the membership tiers down to one, and now for the lowest cost of my membership tiers, you get access to everything, which means you can watch every video that I produce, every audio version of every video I produce, plus bonus and exclusive material just for Patreon members, and you can watch all that ad-free. So check that out over there. And then I started writing again, just posted another piece to Substack today. And again, I will forever, I am committed to only charging the minimum allowed by Substack for subscriptions. But right now, it's free and will remain free until we get into training camp. So I've got 3 pieces up there, including kind of my origin story, my background as a journalist, and then kind of how this podcast came to be, and then a couple other things as well. Really excited about that. I'm having a lot of fun writing. I think it'll be a nice companion piece to what I do here. And also in some ways, I think sometimes there are things that lend itself better to the written word, get a little deeper dive into some analysis and some visuals and things like that as well. So check that out on Substack as well. All the other ways you can support me as an independent content creator and who does this full-time are all listed and linked down below as well. All right, let me put the glasses on for this one. So this one comes to us from Seth Walder. And as I mentioned at the top, like Seth has been doing this for a long time. He's been at ESPN since 2017, and he used to work for the New York Daily News covering the Jets and Giants. So he's not a rookie. He's not new to this. And what he did is he went back here, which I like the concept of this piece, because we all do our off-season grades too early sometimes. I think I'm guilty of that as well. I think, this is sort of the sweet spot for when to do it, because all the moves are made. All the free agents are signed. The 90-man rosters are pretty locked up until we get into camp, and then teams see what they have, guys get hurt or whatever, and then some of these street free agents that are still available tend to find opportunities then. But he went through and he graded every team for their offseason in its entirety. Free agency, the draft, coaching hires, everything else. And something caught my eye that somebody screenshotted and posted on Twitter while I was at the gym. So at the top of each piece, and it's an extensive piece, a lot of times these stories that cover all 32 teams are sort of just little thumbnails, little snapshots, little 2-paragraph summaries of what they thought of their offseason. And, but he doesn't. I mean, he wrote a couple of, like a full page worth, I would say, about the Seahawks and how he felt about them. Gave him a B-. That's not the issue here. He does start each section off with 3 bullet points. One is the biggest move, and that was trading Geno Smith. The move he liked, and that was guaranteeing only $37.5 million to quarterback Sam Darnold. And he goes on to talk about that, how when the move was made initially, or when the Geno trade was made, he wrote, in fact, I don't want to get this wrong, so I'll read it word for word. He said, at the time of the trade, I was critical and wrote, if the Seahawks follow up by signing free agent Sam Darnold to a big contract, that would be a poor swap. And that's what happened. In a vacuum, he says, I still prefer Smith to Darnold, but having seen how it shook out and the costs associated with each player, I'm changing my tune. He goes on to detail the contracts and talk about how he thought it was a really shrewd move to sign Darnold and get the 3rd-round pick in lieu of trying to convince Smith to stick around and having to pay him more and potentially having an issue spill over into the offseason. His 3rd bullet point is the move I disliked. And it was not signing a free agent guard. Guys, we've talked about the offensive line so much over the last few years, and especially this offseason. And as I said at the top, I'm tired of it. And I know there are some of you out there, one of you in particular, I think you know who you are, who still doesn't buy what they've done to improve the offensive line. But I want to read something from his opening statement to start his lead in this story, where he talks about kind of the criteria that he's using. Here's what he says. I'm grading teams on their decision-making, which is important to do somewhat in the moment, as opposed to simply tallying the quantity of talent added. I'm evaluating their choices in free agency, the draft, trades, coaching hires, and anything else that has come up since mid-February. I consider the context of each move, from player evaluation to contracts to value to contention time horizon to positional supply and demand. That sounds great and would lead me to believe that his judgment on the Seahawks offensive line moves would be positive. And they're not. By saying not signing a free agent guard is the move that he disliked, I think he throws everything he spelled out at the top of his piece out the window. He didn't take that stuff into consideration. Here's what he writes a little bit later as he goes into it deeper. At the time of the Metcalf trade, I was confident Seattle was going to use some of its newfound cap space on a free agent guard. I was wrong. While the Seahawks spent their 1st-round pick on guard Gray Zabel, they did not sign a free agent at the position. They did add tackle Josh Jones, who has played guard in the past. Instead, they appear poised to start Anthony Bradford or Christian Haynes at guard, which was a missed opportunity considering players such as Tevin Jenkins, James Daniels, and Mekhi Becton signed for relatively cheap, and Will Hernandez is still available. That's what he writes. Okay. So, to recap, as if this is the first time you're learning that the Seahawks have had a bad offensive line for years. Here's where things stand now. Mike Macdonald, entering his 2nd year, has made it clear that they need to have a good offensive line. They need to be able to physically punish people in the running game, run when teams are expecting them to run, have it be a consistent part of the offense, and also protect the quarterback so they can be effective getting explosive plays downfield. We saw what a debacle last year was. Okay, let's set that aside for a moment. Well, no, don't set it aside. Let's just handle it, right? We know anyone looking at this offensive line situation has to give a tremendous amount of weight to the piss poor job that Ryan Grubb and Scott Huff did in preparing this offensive line last year and crafting an offense that fits their strengths and also hides their weaknesses, helps them out as young players. Very young offensive line. And just creates a scheme that's more forgiving for a struggling offensive line that needs to find some cohesion, some chemistry, and work together and just be better, right? So they go into this offseason. Here's what they have on hand. Charles Cross, top 10 left tackle in the league, in my opinion. He's about to get paid in the next 12 months and should be a mainstay for years to come on the Seahawks offensive line. He is a given. Abe Lucas, who as a rookie was a given and then struggled with injuries the last 2 years, healthy now. We saw last year what an upgrade it was when he came back, even though he wasn't 100% healthy. Now he is. His first healthy offseason in 2 years that he could really attack things. Really excited about him in a contract year. The tackles, the bookends are set. We saw solid play from Olu Oluwatimi last year at center. And there's a guy behind him in Jalen Sundell. We've talked about this at length, who's a much better athlete. Greg Bell thinks he's going to win the center job. I think he has a higher ceiling. I think they're good at center. So we're talking about guard here, right? And he mentions Bradford and he mentions Haynes. One of those guys is going to start at right guard. Last year, Ryan Grubb looked at the group of offensive linemen he had and said, hey, let's do this, completely ignoring what their strengths and weaknesses are. And what Christian Haynes' strength is operating wide zone in the running game. Did it for 4 years at Connecticut, did it well. It's why he was drafted with the 81st pick overall. And if the Seahawks hadn't taken him at 81, he wouldn't have gotten out of the top 90. The 49ers might have taken him instead of Dominic Pooney a couple of picks later. We'll never know. I was just watching the Bootleg Football podcast with Brett Coleman and EJ Snyder, and those two guys have their finger on the pulse of the entire league as well as anyone. When you watch an episode where they're talking about one team, you think they cover that team. That's how good they are at that. And they reminded us in their episode they just did on the Seahawks, which came out yesterday. It's must-see YouTube TV if you want to check it out. Reminded us Christian Haynes was the best guard in the entire draft last year at running wide zone. And then Ryan Grubb's like, nah, we're not going to run that. We're going to run more gap power. And he needed some development time. Okay? Then they go out and they draft Gray Zabel, who, wait for it, best wide zone scheme fit guard in this year's draft. Okay. That sets the stage. What he says is, I didn't like that they didn't sign a free agent guard. Now, if he had said, the move I disliked was that they didn't match the Vikings offer to Will Fries in order to close that deal, which, if you remember the reporting at the time, and I even got some inside information and I shared it to members, that the Seahawks were given an opportunity to match before Fries signed with the Vikings. They refused to do it because it was 5 years. It wasn't the money necessarily. It was the 5-year length, and it was waiving a physical exam. The Vikings were able to go, or were willing to go 2 years beyond the Seahawks and waive a physical exam. For a guy coming off a severe broken leg, broken in multiple places, a guy who wasn't very good his first 2 years in the league, to be honest. Seahawks refused, which I think was the smart thing to do. Now, if Fries may end up being a 5-time All-Pro for the Vikings, it doesn't mean that it was the smart thing to do. It's a risk. It's a huge risk on the part of the Vikings. And oh, by the way, the Seahawks offered him a 3-year deal for $51 million, which would have made him the highest paid offensive lineman in Seahawks history. They didn't try to lowball him, didn't try to get a bargain. They went for it because they recognized that he was a guy that, if 100% healthy, was a perfect scheme fit and was exactly what they were looking for. Young guy in his prime, star potential, they went for it. After that, he doesn't even mention Fries here. And so, but my point is, if he had said that, the move I disliked is they didn't step up and match that deal. They should have. Okay, I can get on board with that. Wouldn't be sitting here talking to you about it. But he goes on to say that a missed opportunity considering players such as Tevin Jenkins, James Daniels, and Mekhi Becton signed for relatively cheap, and Will Hernandez still available. Let's work backwards. Will Hernandez is not a scheme fit in any way, shape, or form. Mid-30s, he's a mauler. He's a phone booth guy. Not an option. Mekhi Becton. If Mekhi Becton was so good, he wouldn't have lasted 6 weeks into free agency. He wouldn't have been cast off by the Jets. He was a failed tackle. Stuck in a great situation in Philadelphia between Lane Johnson and now I'm blanking on their center's name, the guy that took over for Kelsey, but he's outstanding. Just signed a huge contract extension there. Best offensive line in football. They plug him in at right guard. Of course, he's going to look good. But if you don't like Anthony Bradford, why would you like Mekhi Becton? Big, huge, good athlete for his size, and he shows it off in the running game at times, but not always. Not a good pass protector, and not an ideal fit in wide zone. Okay, there's some bad pass protection reps on tape. You could put him and Bradford side by side, and they probably, from things I've seen, similar tape. So that he's not an obvious upgrade for me. I would have been pissed if they had signed him to that deal that the Chargers did, even though it was discounted because he didn't get snapped up in the first wave of free agency. The other guys make me laugh out loud. James Daniels coming off a torn Achilles. It is well established. The guys don't bounce immediately back from torn Achilles. Probably won't be anything close to the player he used to be until 2026. And Tevin Jenkins, stop it. If Tevin Jenkins was so good, why'd he sign a 1-year deal for damn near the veteran minimum to be a backup in Cleveland? So you're you're literally saying the move I disliked the most was that they didn't sign one of those guys. What they did instead is they decided to try to build some continuity and stick with the young group of offensive linemen that they have, actually added to it, drafted 3 more this year. They've drafted more offensive linemen in the last 4 years than any team in the league. You can't just throw that out the window. Okay? Then they went out and got Gray Zabel with their first-round pick, showing a commitment. And also, oh, by the way, stop me if you've heard this before, the best wide zone guard in this class. So in the last 2 years, is this thing on? Have you been listening? The Seahawks have drafted in the last 2 drafts the best wide zone running scheme fit at guard in both of the last 2 drafts to add to what else they have. And then, oh, by the way, and let me remind you what he said in the first paragraph again, the things that he's taking into consideration for this piece, that he evaluates their choices in free agency, the draft, trades, coaching hires, and anything else that's come up since mid-February. So the Seahawks go out, they get rid of Grubb and Huff, who were not prepared to coach in the NFL, and did their players no favors, especially their offensive linemen. And I'm not, if you're new to this and you're sitting at home and you're thinking, what was it that was so bad about, I just don't have the time to explain it all again. I've done it before. But they go out and they hire an entirely new offensive coaching staff, save for Jake Peets, who remained as passing game coordinator. They went and hired John Benton, one of the best offensive line coaches in the NFL over the last 15 years, with a ton of success in this scheme. They hired Rick Dennison, an extremely respected veteran coach who has coached a bunch of different positions, but including the offensive line in this scheme. Justin Outten to be run game coordinator, who's coached this scheme for a long time. Clint Kubiak, the offensive coordinator to call plays in this scheme that he has run forever, learned it from his dad, who learned it from Mike Shanahan. Alignment, experience, continuity, teamwork. How you can look at all of that and just say, man, they should have signed a free agent guard. I'm telling you, Tevin Jenkins would not start on this line they're gonna run out there week 1 this year. I don't think James Daniels would start unless they did the Laken Tomlinson thing and start him no matter what. And how did that work out? And then Mekhi Becton again. I'd rather play Anthony Bradford, younger, cheaper, similar profile. The best wide zone guard in the last 2 drafts And yet this guy still can't get on board with the concept of what they're trying to do on the offensive line. I'm over it, you guys. And look, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's all going to fail. I find that really hard to believe. I think at worst, I think the floor for this offensive line is that they improved by 10 spots over last year. That when all is said and done at the end of the year and the PFFs and the ESPNs of the world and everything, they look back and they grade position groups as they always do, that the Seahawks offensive line at worst, in my opinion, will be in the 20 range. I think it could be better than that. And then you look forward to 2026, 27, 28, building on that, because guess what? There's Josh Jones. I'm doing this off the top of my head. There's a couple other journeyman guys, but Josh Jones is the only significant part of this offensive line group that has a real chance to make the roster this offseason that's not on his rookie contract. And he's what, 27, 28? It's insane. Has to be the youngest offensive line in the league. And maybe I'll dig into this weekend if I have any time and look through every depth chart and see if what I'm saying is true. But I can't imagine there's another line in the entire league that's all guys on rookie deals. So you have to give them a chance to work together. And when you look at them individually, Charles Cross, top 10 pick, Gray Zabel, top 16 pick, and the best, in my opinion, best wide zone scheme guard in the draft, Oluwatimi didn't allow a sack his last 2 years in college, playing at a high level. And Jalen Sundell, a guy who I think his ceiling is higher. Christian Haynes, last year, the 81st pick, the best zone guard in the draft last year. And then Abe Lucas, who we've seen, if he's healthy, if he truly is healthy, can be a top 10, top 15 at worst tackle in this league. And a guy that, again, if he is healthy, if he's past these knee issues, is worth a contract extension. How you can look at that group and then all the others that they've drafted behind him in the last couple of years, including two others this year where John Benton had a hand in selecting them to fit the scheme, and Bryce Cabledew and Mason Richmond. And you have to give that group time to play together. I think this is the right coaching staff to help get the most out of them. And I think by the end of the year, I'm going to be able to, it's not really my style. I don't like doing this, but I'm probably going to say I told you so because I'm going to be able to. That's where I land on that situation. Again, I really do hate to be critical of other journalists, other writers. I know what goes into it. I've done it, been there. It's especially guys that have to cover the whole league. It's tough. It's tough. But if you're going to take such a strong stance, dig a little deeper. Don't be as lazy. I'm so over this take, and I hope this is the last time we have to talk about it from a constructive standpoint, right? From an organizational standpoint. Certainly, when we get into the season, even the preseason, we're going to be talking about the performance of the offensive line. That's going to be a storyline throughout the year. I just believe very, very strongly that it's going to look so much better at a certain point. We're all going to kind of look at each other and go, okay, at least it's not the thing we have to talk about all the time. Guys, if you would, if you like what I do and you want to support it, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Check out the Patreon and the Substack. Right now, Substack, again, is free and will be all the way until we get into training camp. Patreon, just that low-level $10 tier is going to include everything and will continue as I move forward. I got rid of the more expensive ones. Actually, I think I left them on there just in case you want to contribute at a higher level because you want to help support what I do. And then some of the more direct ways are listed and linked down below in the description as well. Really, really cool news. I've got a couple ideas over the next couple days. Obviously, tomorrow I'll do what I was going to do today, and I'll give you my 5 most compelling storylines as we approach training camp. Monday, Warren Sharp from Sharp Football is going to be joining me. Super excited about this. He is one of the, pun intended, sharpest analytical minds out there covering the game. Sent me a copy of his new preview book today. So I'm going to spend the weekend with that, and he's going to join me on Monday, talk about his thoughts from an analytical perspective, what he expects from the Seahawks this year and the rest of the NFC West and the conference. So look forward to that. In the meantime, follow me on Twitter and Blue Sky at Seahawks Forever. Forever and always go Hawks. Thanks for watching, you guys. I appreciate it. Bye.